Welcome to the Storytellers, the radio show and podcast that features those who choose to leave their mark on the world through the art of story. I'm your host, Grace Sammon. I look forward to our time together today. Now, let's meet our storyteller. Welcome to episode 81 of the Storytellers with Jocelyn Jones, artist extraordinaire. Jocelyn is a much sought after acting coach for over 30 years with Hollywood A-listers and those who are just starting out. She is frequently known as Hollywood's secret weapon to some of the biggest movie stars in the industry. She is also a confidential consultant on some of the highest grossing movie pictures of all time. I've been lucky enough to read her amazing memoir, Artist, which we're going to start out right away by welcoming Jocelyn Jones to the Storytellers microphone. And we're going to talk about the hands on the front of your book and the hands behind me. Jocelyn, welcome to the Storytellers microphone.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. I love your mission. I love what you're doing for writers. I pretty much support everything you're doing. I think you're tremendous.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You could tell how excited I was. I knocked over the microphone right away. So this has been a long anticipated episode of the Storytellers. We were supposed to record originally way back, I think, in October or November, but it gave me the opportunity to actually reread your amazing memoir. So let's start off, though, with the cover and these fabulous hands, because you could tell I connected with you right away. Let's talk about your book.
Okay. Well, the hands specifically, I in my husband's office, my husband and I write together and we write separately. And in his office, he has a photograph of one of those hands, a single hand, which I have always loved. And I learned that these hands come from Cavos las Manos, Cave of Hands in Patagonia. And they're some 60,000+ years old. They are man's first expression of himself. We've seen the cave paintings that are older and they tell the story of the hunt. But for a person to put their hand on a cave wall and they blew paint around it, so they were stenciled, to say, my hand, therefore I am, it is tremendously moving for me. So I started looking at all those pictures. And at one point, I tried to convince my husband, we have to go to Patagonia to take a photograph of these hands. So I have my own photograph. And we haven't done that yet. But I think they're quite extraordinary. And I think they reverberate in the heart of everyone who looks at them, which is kind of what I wanted. They also exist all over the world, Grace, including in the United States. They found them in the United States. So how, that kind of eclectic, collective impulse in art, has been going on, throughout human existence.
And that desire, which you talk so beautifully in your memoir about, that desire, that urge, that need to create and to leave our mark.
Yeah. Well, what is a life? Really, I wrote the book because I do believe there's an artist in everyone. And I believe that your first masterpiece is your life. And if you look at your life as, okay, this is my canvas and I'm taking responsibility for it and I'm going to put there what I want, the only really profound question is really, if you could have anything in the world, barring all obstacle, what would that be? What do you really want? And that it's possible to continue to ask yourself that question in meditation and in stillness until something moves in you and you go, oh, what's that? Because many times what people really want, they're afraid to admit to themselves. So
your book was so moving to me, Jocelyn, on so many levels. I picked it up because, I knew that I would have the opportunity to meet with you and talk about that. But I started on page 1, started turning down pages and underlining. And, the whole book is filled for me with those. And I love that you are an artist in your own right in many ways, but you are no stranger. You've done 40 films, over 300 television episodes. Why this book and why teaching for you? I think I found that very interesting that you wouldn't just, and I always hate to use the word just, that you wouldn't just continue on that career of acting. Tell me about that.
Okay. Well, I can't remember what the statistics were on films and televisions, but I think they were my dad's. I didn't do 300 shows, but he
Oh,
did under television. But that's fine. Um, I just wanted to clear that up. So teaching, why teaching? We have paths in life. We have that I always knew I would teach. And what was interesting is, I had a terrible time in school and I was thrown out of most of the schools I went to. And one of the reasons was that I was pretty demanding of teachers. I demanded that they capture my interest and that they let me know that they loved their subject and that they intended to deliver this subject that they were passionate about to each individual in the room, because I spotted early on that people receive things differently. And so as a teacher later, I used to say to my students, I only teach about, 40 things, but I teach them in about 40,000 different ways because they land on people. And, there's, something, and then something, and then something. There are levels of certainty, uh, and how a message may strike us and help us. So I don't know. I always thought I would teach one day, and it's a subject that I understood. Recently, I was talking to my husband about puzzles. As a kid, I was obsessed with puzzles, and we had this big uh, chest, toy chest, but it was filled with puzzles. Those metal things that you have to find the right way. Every kind of puzzle. And I used to sit on a rainy day and do all of them and lay them up on the stone steps in front of the terrace and be so proud of all these puzzles. Well, it's a thing, I think that's part of teaching. It's, to taking things, apart and putting them back together. And how does this fit? And how will this information impinge on this student? And, you're delivering technique, but just like we all learn to read differently, we all take in technique very differently, and what technique works for one person doesn't work for another person. So, my theory on teaching is you give them all of the tools and you make sure that they know what the tool is all about and how they can use it. And then they will end up using the tools that are most effective for them.
I was struck in your book because in your bio and slightly in your book, but more so in your bio, you talk about all the A-list people, but you're very humble. You certainly don't share that type of story in the book. So is there also I get this incredible sense of humility from you as well in terms of your work. Is that accurate?
That's a really lovely thing to say. I do practice that. I had a lot of teachers who came from on high, these kind of guru, acting teachers are known for being this kind of a guru. And frankly, acting students tend to put acting teachers on pedestals. So I have to kind of knock that down purposefully. It's not about, and it's certainly not about me, it's about the student and helping the student. So there's that, and there's, I talk about the painters and these artists that I was raised with, but I don't mention their name. The same thing with actors. I don't want to. It's just not necessary. I'd like to stand on my own words and my own ground and my own knowledge. I don't. I don't need to impress people with who I've met and known and been blessed to really study. Because, and also when you teach, you're learning. You learn at least as much when you teach. I know you know this because I know
Oh,
you're a
I
teacher.
couldn't agree with you more on that point. I'm
Yeah.
teaching a class on writing right now, and it's very humbling. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. And one of the things I also think about is, when I talk about how I get to interview you and you're breadth of work over 30 years. You started out as a very lonely child.
I did. I did. And one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, I keep a picture on my desk of that lonely child who's sort of my muse, and everything I do for her. And there's an exercise in the book about that, finding a picture of yourself and journaling with a child in you, because most of us have, if we were helicopter parented, then we have this desperate need for freedom and to understand ourselves as individuals. And if we were ignored, we are kind of left in a space of am I worthy? Is there something wrong with me? This seems a natural order that your parents are, they look at you and they, you see the joy in their faces. And growing up with artists was a blessing, but also artists tend to be a little self-involved. And in my time, the artists that I grew up with, they just kind of put their kids on the planet and said, go. And so it was lonely. And I lived in nature. We lived with woods surrounding us. So I went to the woods and played in the woods all day and had made friends with trees and rocks and lizards and views and finding, Mohican arrowheads. Do you remember finding arrowheads as a kid by the river? All this treasure that is just there on the earth waiting for you to engage with it.
If we are patient enough to observe it, instead
Yes.
of rushing by. So, how did you get so smart? Your book is filled with incredible life lessons. I started it thinking, okay, this is how I could be a better actor. Maybe I'd be a better pod show host. But it is about creating this inner life. That really is your message. So, how did you get that smart?
It's channel. I heard it. I've been sort of supported and believed in and trusted in my higher self, in guides, in collective messages, in the collective, in the ether that need to be put into art right now. So, when I wrote the book, it was very fluid at times. And I would later read it and go, wow, I didn't realize I wrote that, and would enjoy it. So it's the same thing with my my students would tell me, oh God, Jocelyn, you're psychic, and I get nervous being in front of you because I see like you see everything. And it's just a matter of being open and listening. But it's all starts with stillness. You have to breathe into your heart and become still and open the space, and then anything can come in. And I wanted to teach that to others, how to do that.
Have done so very successfully. Now you have a documentary series coming out. Talk to us about that.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. Well, that's been 3 years in the making, and it's really hard to believe, but we are finished. It's
Yay.
all coming back from post-production where they work on the color and the sound and perfect things. And so it will be available probably in about a month. We have to build the website to stream it from. And I think it'll be available in around a month. It's 16 episodes. It's about a master class that I taught many of the actors, and you get to know the actors because we interview them, which is kind of great. And in the interviews, you'll hear like, well, I've studied with Jocelyn, for 20 years. I've studied with Jocelyn for 8 years. And, the people, when I opened up that class, because I hadn't taught in 2 years, it was closed in about 24, 48 hours. And it was the people who have studied with me for a long time. And they didn't even know we were going to film it. I didn't even know I was going to film it. It came, when you're going in the right direction, the universe really offers up things for you to help you along that journey. Like messages like, well, why don't you film it? Well, okay. Well, what would the insurance be on the cameras that we rented? Oh, no, we're not going to film it. Can't pay that insurance. So then we took all of the tuition and bought the film equipment. And my husband, who is a director, is a television director, he's directed quite a bit. And he also is a professor at USC, and he teaches filmmaking. And I had asked him years ago to bring that to the studio for actors. And he did 2 or 3, I think, 16-week programs to, and we made filmmakers. People left acting and became directors, and people left acting and became camera and editors. And it's the same thing that happens at USC. It opens your world to, oh, I like this part, I like this part, I want to film. So we had built-in camera people from that class. So we put 3 cameras, and we have lights and sound and everything at the theater. So it we're pretty proud of it. I don't think anyone's ever done anything like this for an acting class, and there's a reason for it, because it takes 3 years to edit. So
So it's a 16-part series. And I imagine that even though it's an acting class, like your book, there are probably some pretty profound life lessons in there.
I think
Yes?
so. And I think it's, it comes out of the book. It's sort of, they bloomed together, so to speak. Yes. And there's pieces of the book in there. I think what's valuable to people who are not actors, I mean, directors, we're getting endorsements for it now that are pretty powerful, and directors find it, they don't know what actors do. People don't know what goes on in an acting class, except for these series that are very nasty about acting teachers and the acting class and how silly it is. People have made fun of acting class for a long time. And I wanted to put out something that showed you what a real professional acting class looks like. And the commitment from the actors, Grace, is just extraordinary. I mean, I have high expectations. These are professional actors. So I ask them to bring me the scene complete. You do everything you know how to do to this scene, so I can give you a critique, not on what you didn't take the time to do. I knew to do it, but I didn't take the time to do it. So they're like small pieces of theater. The scenes are 10 minutes long, sometimes 20 minutes long. They have, furniture, set pieces, props, lights, sound. They're very committed, and they are beautiful actors. I mean, I would look at these scenes edited and I would go, well, what am I going to say? That's just beautiful work, And then the critique would come up and I go, oh yeah, that's a good point.
So you draw a distinction between how acting classes are portrayed and what really happens. And you talk about commitment, but what else is going on in there that differentiates?
I think care. I think it's taken me a long time to hone in on humility. And this is not about me, it's about you, and listening and seeing people at their best and then helping them to achieve that is a gift. It's not, I tell them all the time, it's not me. Stop going, oh, Jocelyn, it's not me. It's a gift. It it's seamless. It's been there for a long time.
And you talk too, and I think this leads back to something you said earlier about when you're going in the right direction, the universe has a way of taking you in that direction. Talk a little bit about manifesting, because you and I have had conversations about that before.
Yes. Well, here's something too. As a child, I was lonely because I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel seen. All I needed was somebody to see me. We all need people to see us, really see us. That's why when you look at a baby and you lock eyes with them and you tell them, I see you, they just light up, because that's all we need on the earth, is to be seen as people, and we can flourish. And so then I ended up manifesting a career where I would see others, lots of others, and they would feel that I had seen them. So that's my big manifestation, I think. And I think, for me, manifestation is being very clear on what you want, and then beginning acting as if you already have it, because that will guide you. If you already have it, you start doing the things you would do if you already had it. And that is a high vibration. You keep your vibration high, not low. You don't run around in the muck of I'll never work again and I haven't had an audition in a year and a half. No, I'm an actor. I do the things that actors do, and I do them every day. And if you don't know the things that actors do, it's pretty easy to find out. And I do those things every day, and I keep myself in joy and a high vibration. And then, it's law of attraction. It will come to you. The right connections will begin to occur.
Well, you do the most amazing job of seeing other people and bringing them to that higher self. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you and I met, that I've had the opportunity to read Artist. I want everybody to go out and get it, whether you think you're an artist or not. You're living a life that you're creating. You get to turn down all the pages. Jocelyn Jones, thank you for being on the Storytellers with me today.
Thank you, Grace. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. It's beautiful.
Thank you. This has been a copyrighted episode of The Storytellers by Grace Sammon and Authors on the Air, Global Radio Network.
That concludes this episode of The Storytellers. I'm so glad you could be part of the story today. I hope you share the stories, tell your own, and come back for another episode, because when our stories are told, everything changes. I'm Grace Sammon.